Hey guys, just a real simple video today, just because I haven't made one in a long time. I'm just going to show how to do a basic oil change. As we all know, gas prices and oil prices have been going up, over the last several years. And I think a good way to just save some money is to do your own oil changes on your car. So I've got a 2010 Honda Odyssey. And every single oil change is going to be real similar. I want to say, if you got questions about what to do, ask me in the comments, and I'll try to help you out as best I can. So 2010 Honda Odyssey. Most vehicles on your oil fill cap. So on this vehicle, the dipstick is right there. Oil fill cap is right there. And on the oil fill cap, they're going to tell you what type of oil to use. For this vehicle, and as on most Hondas, it's a 5W20. Now that can be regular oil, like conventional oil, or that can be synthetic oil, or it can be a synthetic blend. You just want to make sure that those numbers and letters are the same, 5W20. Now, to start this oil change, you get the vehicle up in the air so you can get underneath it. Some trucks, and some other vehicles, SUVs and that kind of thing, it's kind of handy because they're high enough you can get underneath it. But I had to get my van up in the air. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take my oil cap off, and I'm going to take my dipstick and just pull it out just a little bit. You can see I just pull it out just a little bit. And the reason I do that is so that when I pull the drain plug on the bottom of the engine, which is down underneath, okay, when I pull that drain plug, to have these open will allow the oil to drain out more evenly and a lot easier, so it doesn't create any kind of a vacuum. So you basically just want the oil cap off, the dipstick up, and that allows air to get in the oil tank as the oil's draining out. I've seen it where guys haven't done this and all the oil doesn't come out. So just take your oil cap off, pull up your dipstick just a little bit. And let me grab my light, and we'll go underneath the car here. And as you can see, I've already got it draining. Got my drain pan under here. I even have my oil filter off. I'll show you here in just a minute. Let me scoot this out of the way and get a light under here. So here's my oil plug, okay? On most vehicles, it's gonna be even marked under the oil pan. You can see on this oil pan, it says engine oil. And there's a bolt. This plug goes right in that hole, right there, okay? It's a 17 millimeter bolt. It looks like a bolt. That's what it is. Just a 17 millimeter plug. And you just unscrew it just like you would any other bolt. Once you pull it out, the oil will drain. Got a drain pan underneath there, and then while that's draining, the next thing you want to do, get my light, is pull your oil filter. Right there is where my oil filter went. Okay, I'm gonna get my new one because I already pulled my old one off. You can see it's draining in the oil pan. One thing I want you to note though is when you take your oil filter off and it just screws on and off, lefty loosey, righty tighty, it just screws on and off. One thing you got to note though on your oil filter is on oil filters there's a black O-ring. Sorry, see that black O-ring? Put it down here. This is the O-ring right here. There's a black O-ring. And every now and then, when you take an oil filter off, that O-ring can come off and get stuck. Let me see if I can show you. And you just get stuck right on the rim here. And so you just want to make sure that when you take your oil filter off, that O-ring comes with it. If it's stuck up there, just pull it off, okay? But just make sure when you pull your oil filter off, make sure that O-ring comes with it. Okay, so I'm gonna go get my new oil filter and I'll put it on. Be right back. Okay guys, I got my new oil filter here on the bench, just kind of showing you a little mechanic's trick. Some engine oil filters you can't do this with because of the way they're mounted. But if they're mounted the way that I just showed you here on this vehicle, I like to fill up the oil filter with fresh oil. What that does is just keeps the oil system from getting any air bubbles in it immediately upon startup. Okay, it's not a necessity. I just like to do it. The other thing, and so what you'll do is, you know, take your new oil and pour it in. You have to let it soak down for a couple minutes and fill it back up again, let it soak down. It'll take a few times for you to fill it up. But the other thing I like to do is take some of this fresh oil, and you can see on this new filter, this is the O-ring that I was telling you about, to make sure that it comes off with the old one. And I'll just take some of this fresh oil and put it on this O-ring, and that will help the seal. That'll help it seal better, and it'll also help it come off so that the O-ring doesn't get stuck to the surface of the oil filter mount. So I just take a little bit of oil like that and lube up that O-ring, and then I'm going to top this filter off with some more oil and put it up on the oil filter mount. Okay guys, here's my oil pan. Got the oil drained into there. Remember, this is my old filter. Make sure the O-ring's there, because it's you know, not on the oil filter mount. And underneath, I'll show you, we got our new oil filter in there. Turn this light a bit. We got our new oil filter in there. When you screw the oil filter on, you don't need to use an oil filter wrench, okay? This thing should screw on real easily. Okay, let me unscrew it here a little bit. It should screw on real easy. And then you don't have to like He-Man this thing on there. Just snug it up, you know, so it's nice and snug. And that's all you need. It'll seal just fine. You can check it when you start the engine up just to make sure. One thing about this vehicle that I want to note is, you'll notice right underneath the oil filter mount there's this cross member, and when you take the old oil filter off and it drains, a bunch of oil gets all over this cross member. Stuff like this will happen on vehicles all the time. It just depends on where they mount the oil filter. I've got another vehicle where the oil filter is mounted on the back of the engine, it's like sideways, and so when you take the oil filter off, all that oil drains down the side of the engine. It's no big deal. Just take a rag, wipe it up. It's no big deal. I also want to say too that you saw me fill up this new oil filter with fresh oil, and again, you can only do this on vehicles where the oil filters are mounted like this, mounted vertically. Sometimes oil filters are mounted upside down, sometimes they're mounted horizontally. When they're mounted that way, obviously you can't fill them up with oil because it'll all dump out when you go to screw it on. So like I said, it's not a necessity to fill up the oil filter with new oil, but when I can, I do. I just think it's a good practice. All right, so then the next thing is get farther underneath here and show you, there's the oil filter plug right there. You see engine oil, the plug is in. I'm gonna tighten it up. Like I said, it looks just like a bolt, just like a typical bolt, and screw it in lefty loosey righty tighty. I'm gonna tighten it up with my wrench, and again, you don't want to over tighten this. Just snug it up nice, you know, just snug it up tight. It doesn't have to be, you know, crazy wrenched on, you know, torqued on or whatever. Just snug it up nice and tight, and then wipe that. See, I got a little bit of oil drip there. Just kind of wipe that up, so that way when you check it, you know, you're not, you know it's tight and not leaking. So I'm gonna snug this up, and then we will fill up the engine with fresh oil. So we'll be right back. Okay guys, this is the last step. We're gonna grab a funnel, put it down in the oil fill. See right there's the oil fill. I got my lid up, my cap off already. Put the funnel down in there and fill her up. Now, fill in the oil. What you want to do is you want to look up your engine oil fill capacity. I happen to have a Honda Odyssey Haynes repair manual, and I can look up capacities on that. These repair manuals, if you're a DIYer, these repair manuals come in real handy, whether it's Haynes or Chilton's or whatever. But if you don't have one of these manuals, that's okay. Just Google it. I mean, the internet will, you should be able to find capacities real easily on whatever vehicle you're using. You just need to know, year, make, and model of your vehicle and what engine it has, because different engine sizes will have different fuel capacities and all that kind of stuff. I think right here, so this manual, it shows me engine type. Doesn't have capacities there. Anyway, oh, there's capacities right there. So I know for this vehicle, it takes about 4.5 quarts, and it even says including the oil filter. So about 4.5 quarts to top me off. Now here's the thing. So I know that my capacity is about 4.5 quarts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put about 3.5 quarts in there, and then check my dipstick. And I always want to go according to my dipstick, right? Like what it says in the manual, that is the capacity, but you always want to check your dipstick. So I'm going to put about 3.5, maybe even 4 quarts in there, and then check my dipstick and where am I at. And if I'm close, then what I'll do is I'll put my dipstick down in there, I'll put my cap back on, I'll get the vehicle down on the ground so I can start it up, let it run for a little bit, make sure there's no leaks, shut it off, and then come back and check my dipstick again to see where I'm at and see if I need to top it off. As long as, let me pull out the dipstick here and show you, when I'm filling it up, as long as I've got oil touching my dipstick, I'm comfortable starting it up and just letting the engine idle. Get it on the, get it off its jack stands, get it on the ground, start it up and let it idle. As long as I've got oil touching my dipstick, I know that I've at least got enough to start it up. And then, I can start it up, check for any leaks, shut it off, and then at the very last, top it off to get it within the marks there. So you can see on this dipstick, there's the low mark and high mark. I just want it somewhere in between here, okay? So I'm gonna do all that and come back and we'll close up this video. Okay guys, with the oil that I put in the filter, and then the oil that I just put in, I've put about, not even quite 4 quarts yet. And as you can see on the dipstick, so I can get a shot of it, it's about halfway between the two lines already. It's about right in here. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's about halfway between the marks, and that's so what's gonna see there, you can kind of see it. Now that's where I want to be. The thing is the initial startup is important, because when I initially start up the engine, and this is especially true if you don't fill up your oil filter first. But when I initially start up the engine, my oil level is going to go down, because the oil level, or the oil is the oil is going to move all throughout the engine and fill in the spaces that it needs to fill in. And then when I shut it off, it'll be lower than that, and so I'll need to top it off. So I've got it at a place where I can start it up and let it, just let it idle for a few minutes. Check and make sure I've got no leaks. My filter's not leaking, my plug isn't leaking, and then I'll shut it back off and pull the dipstick out and finally top it off at my final level. Now here's the other thing that I want to note, because this could be new or kind of make you freak out if you're not used to doing this. But let's say I'm filling up, putting my oil in, and I pull out my dipstick and go to look. And I look at it and oh my gosh, it looks like the oil level is way up here, right? Don't freak out about, it's not, but like, just let's say that you pull the dipstick out and you kind of freak out because you're like, oh, I overfilled it. Give the oil some time to settle, because sometimes when you're filling it up, it just splashes up onto the dipstick and will give you a false reading. So just give it a few minutes to settle, and then, you know, wipe your dipstick off, put it back down into the pan, and then give it a look, and that'll give you a more accurate reading. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I've got my vehicle up in the air right now. I'm gonna get it down on the ground, start it up and let it idle, make sure I've got no leaks, and then check the dips, you know, shut it off, check the dipstick, and top off my final fluid level. So I'll be right back. Okay guys, so started the engine up. You know, I got the vehicle back on the ground, started the engine up, let it idle for just a few minutes, and, you know, checked for leaks. My oil filter's not leaking, my oil plug isn't leaking. And so now let's pull the drain, or I'm sorry, the dipstick out. Wipe off the dipstick. Put it back down into the pan. Let's see where we're at. I don't know if you can see that, but you see now it's not even touching the bottom line. See that? So now I just want to top off to my final fluid level. Okay, so I'll open up, take off the fill cap again, and put my funnel down in there and top off to my final level. And again, I'm just shooting for, you know, just, I don't know, just kind of go about half a quart at a time. And you just want to be somewhere in between these two lines. This vehicle, it uses a little oil, so I try to get on the high side. You know, I try to get towards the top, but you just want to be anywhere. This is an acceptable range. So as long as it's your final fluid check, you want to be anywhere in between those two lines. This is your lower level and maximum, lower and maximum. Yeah, and that's it. You know, I think, you know, like I said earlier, oil is getting expensive, and servicing your vehicles makes it expensive. So I think this is just an easy way. If you're physically capable and you got some wrenches, then I think this is an easy way to save your $50 that you go down to the local lube shop, you know, every 3,000 miles or 5,000 miles, whatever you're doing. So yeah, so that's how you change your oil. And like I said, if you got questions, feel free to comment. I'll try to help out as much as I can. But all right, guys, have fun working on your cars.